Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this discussion about community networks, how they work, who they serve, and why they are important. I'm Reed Sharkey, the Community Broadband Specialist and Research Associate here at the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society. We are a 44-year-old nonprofit dedicated to telecommunications policy in the public interest. Our goal is to bring open, affordable, high-capacity, and competitive broadband to all people in the U.S., ensuring a thriving democracy. I am so excited to introduce my colleague, Dr. Caroline Stratton, who will introduce our panelists and moderate the discussion. Dr. Stratton is Benton's research director, overseeing our efforts to support a broadband for all agenda. She leads and facilitates analysis that demonstrates the benefits of broadband adoption and the cost of disconnection, for individuals and communities. Dr. Stratton, over to you.
Thanks, Reed. I am excited to be talking today with our guest panelists about community learning networks, or essentially how community broadband networks serve as sites of learning for digital and technical skills. So for today's event, I'm going to introduce our panelists, and I'm also going to let them share a bit about their networks to orient our discussion. So with me today are Dr. Esther Zhang, founder of Seattle Community Network and a postdoc in computer science at the University of Washington. She is a Benton Opportunity Fund Fellow. Also with us is Monique Tate, co-director of Community Tech New York and a Benton Opportunity Fund Fellow. She previously managed a community network with the Equitable Internet Initiative in Detroit. And Dr. Alex Wermer-Colin, co-founder and executive director of Philly Community Wireless. Dr. Wermer-Colin is the academic and research director of Temple University Libraries' Loretta C. Duckworth Scholars Studio. So I'm going to let Esther kick us off in giving us a little bit of detail about the Seattle Community Network.
Hi, hopefully you can all hear me. I'm here today representing the Seattle Community Network, where we explicitly call it a community learning network, and we set up a DIY network infrastructure. Next slide. So we have in SCN what we call a community of practice, which is basically we install networks mostly for homeless communities. So we serve homeless shelters and low-income housing, serving around 200 to 300 users at this point, and it's all volunteer run. Next slide. So just more pictures of installs at a particular type of shelter called tiny house villages, which are outdoor sort of standalone sheds that are used as emergency shelter housing for people to come inside. And so this activity lets us get our hands on nuts and bolts of building the internet in a more accessible way than, it's harder to get a job at a company doing this stuff. And so you can get this experience for free by volunteering. Next slide. So NYC Mesh was actually, our big brother, our operational inspiration. So I got a lot of my training there, volunteering for NYC Mesh in New York, where I'm from. And next slide. I would say Detroit, the DCTP Equitable Internet Initiative is another community network, which was our digital equity inspiration in the US. And so they're another style of community network that's not volunteer run. The technicians are trained and employed community members, and it's really about serving the low-income neighborhoods using community anchor institutions like churches. Next slide. There's a great documentary on YouTube about this network, so I would encourage you to check it out. Basically, I just wanted to show you we're all kind of doing the same thing. We're building wireless networks using similar equipment, so we're a community of practice together. Next slide. The niche that we kind of fill in Seattle is that there's a very strong basically socioeconomic divide between classes of different workers, mostly tech workers and everyone else. And we have extreme problems with homelessness. And so we ended up filling this niche where we support people who can't afford internet access, largely living at homeless shelters and low-income housing. And so we get funding for this occasionally from the city and other local government resources like the county. Next slide. And so we end up serving these tiny house villages and tent encampments. So I'll talk more about this in motivation, but yeah, this funding and support from the city has been really crucial to our model. Next slide. So the overall vision, I would say, is we initially talked about it as SCN as a teaching network, as in a teaching hospital, where we're all sort of volunteering and contributing so that low-income people can have lower costs for their internet access and potentially no costs. So we changed this language up, saying it's a learning network because we're all actually teaching and learning. It's not top down as in traditional teaching. And so we have a lot of educational initiatives, both formal and informal, as part of our work. Some of these are, partnerships with other workforce development programs, such as the Filipino Community Center here in Seattle had a broadband technicians program, which we partnered with to do real live network installs. We ran a program in collaboration with Black Brilliance Research called Digital Stewards, which was inspired by the Detroit work. And we also had youth digital stewards, and so we had youth also building these networks. Next slide. And we also have monthly community events such as hack nights, which are public and open. Like we had them at the Filipino Community Center for a while until we actually got our own lab space, which is back here. But with our strong community partners, we use these events to build relationships. And then we grow our community to people who just find us through these public events. They join our Discord server, and we start organizing to do all the installs. Next slide. So we also collaborate with by teaching at the tribal broadband boot camps, and we consider one of our core missions to be building up and spreading knowledge about how to run networks. So if you go to the next slide, one of the reasons we're able to do teaching at TBB and other in other places is because we have all this operational experience, especially running 4G LTE networks, which not a lot of people have experience doing. So we've got LTE deployments, and next slide. So we base them, we have base stations at community centers and schools and libraries, and we'll serve homes from there. Next slide. And so often we'll also install Wi-Fi networks off of wired connections, for example, at the tiny house villages. I just wanted to give you a picture of what that looks like. Next slide. So yeah, that's just a quick overview, and I'll go into more detail later. Thank you.
Thanks, Esther. Next, we're going to hear from Monique about the work of Community Tech New York.
Sorry, muted. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be here, and thank you for that. Community broadband networks absolutely are sites for learning. Next slide, please. And at Community Tech New York, I'll say that I'm the OG in the room because we've been around for a very long time and influencing this work. With that, our approach, of course, is to demystify tech. That's exactly what we want to offer to the community, but we're not always building networks. Next slide, please. We work within a community capacity. And when I said it goes way back, I started 2009, and I'm showing you two different slides because I am currently co-director with Community Tech New York, but my roots began in Detroit. But as you'll see in a sec, we've always been partners with New York, Detroit and New York working together. So this slide is actually reflecting when the work began in New York in 2009 and takes us through the current period at these varying levels. And these are definitely our digital stewards. Next slide, please. The timeline for Detroit is very similar. I'm just going to jump to 2013 because that's when I built our first community network. We were one of those prototype networks built in Detroit after the training we received as digital stewards and what we continue to do. And thank you, Esther. We had influences. One of the pictures Esther showed was my team literally in New York. And we've also worked with Philly Wireless as well in sharing knowledge. Next slide. Thank you. We at Community Tech approach building networks by saying that building of these networks builds community power. The key to our building is in our portable network kit, because our portable network kit is literally a teaching device in and of itself. It talks about the workings of the internet, how it works and what it does. Continue. So I'm going to go through next slide. I said continue, but I meant next slide. I'm going to go through a couple of the slides a little quicker, not this one as quickly, but they're going to just show you varying options of the portable network kit. Each of the kits brought a Wi-Fi signal that goes as indicated, about the size of a football field, but you can mesh them when you configure more than one. So you can build a huge network, whether it's in open space or whether it's within closed space that people are able to use. Continue. Next slide, please. These are just varying pictures of the portable network kit. It's a DIY off-the-shelf equipment that's used. And this one is a training P&K. It's smaller, carried around in a clear case like a briefcase. The Pelican cases are waterproof. They are what we use when we establish it to be outside, whether it's stationary or whether it's temporary. Next slide. This is when it's literally set up with antennas that are distributing and broadcasting the signals either omnidirectional all the way around. So when we say we build these networks, the learning part of it is that the community members that we work with, they are residents from those various areas, and they learn all of the details and premises of how to build the portable network kits. Yes, you may go to the next slide, because each of those is going to be only a couple of seconds. Thank you. Now, when we ask about how do we build these networks, there are two factors that are significant and key. First is the equipment, but second is the community organizing. And it almost actually has first place, because without reaching out to the community, there's no one for you to build a network for or with. Next slide. So the outreach and application is exactly how we not only identify and meet our neighbors, community members and residents, but it's how we get their input. Community networks is the key. It means the community is building them and adding to them. Continue. Next slide. Currently, one of the partners that we work with significantly, along with the Point in the Bronx, is El Puente in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, and we've been working with them for about 4 years. This is the network that they have identified for their area they can build. Next slide. I'm going fast on timing. Now I want to talk a little bit about the portable network kit, how it can be used in addition to it being a network. It literally is a teaching tool in and of itself. Next slide. And we have partners from all over the country. Yes, we are a New York based organization, and we have a lot of New York clients, but we, as you'll see in a few moments, have extended our teaching and education all across the country. This is a class that we were teaching, of course, 2020, you know, that was pandemic. So we converted. Next slide, please. And taught online. We have worked locally, of course, in the Far Rockaway area of New York City. Next slide. These are all, you saw them all looking at their phones. They were literally trying to get onto a network. The P&K, the portable network kit, is also used as a wireless network, which I talked about examples of initially. Next slide. This one I want to spend a second on, because when we talk about it being used as a wireless network, one of our key focuses is for organizing. It's communities being healed, communities being able to do things for themselves. We take ownership of that. So as you can see, it was deployed as a network for the first COVID testing site that was in Ulster County. Next slide, please. It's an archive. Our partners in Tennessee, next slide, they literally use that. They literally use it. This is their landing page to capture the Appalachian Folk Archive. These are the Tennessee partners, and it's a way that you can store information. Today, that's significantly important as well when we have various information that's disappearing, being taken away from us with book bans and so forth. So we should use this as a tool to archive much of the information we may be afraid of losing. Next slide. And we love the versatility of it, of the portable network kit. It also builds community resiliency. Next slide. And in that way, I mean that those individuals who are coming together are learning how to have off-grid encrypted communication with one another by using the portable network kit. It can be used as an internet device, connecting us to the World Wide Web and spreading that lengthy, or it can also be used as an intranet. This is significantly important because one of CTNY's focuses is also emergency preparedness. So you need a communication tool that's not going to stop if the internet stops, but that you can communicate with neighbors. Next slide. Although I don't have, and these are just pictures of us working within network and building portable network kits and using them within our networks, because we can have hybrid networks that are wired and connected, but also wireless that mesh and come together. Next slide. It's not only this that we work on, but it's also we're working with long-range radios. This is our community tech lab launched in 2023 at El Puente. You see it's former, what it was before, and what it's turned into. I show that to inspire you out there to say, if you have space that you can use, you'll soon see a zine released in early next year that's talking about building a community tech lab and how it's done. All that equipment is now in there. And any of you who know networking, you know that that window is literally the crimping order for cables. Next slide. This is just sharing that we have to make sure that it's inclusive. So we have information as much as possible, almost all of it in Spanish as well. So we can include and invite that audience. Continue, please. Next slide. Showing again and reinforcing and ending as I began that it's a learning, community networks are definitely learning experiences and learning opportunities. So this is some of the education going on in the Community Tech Lab. Next slide. And last but not least, this is where we are identifying all the partners we're working with all over the country. Our focus is each one teach one. So we train trainers along with training them in community organizing. We train them how to build networks and teach others. There's nothing you can do if you have no one to share it with. And the last devices that we're working on now, as I mentioned, are long-range radios. I don't have a picture, but that's where our focus is now. You can continue. I believe that might be last. No, next slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Monique. And we'll do our last network introduction with Alex of Philly Community Wireless.
Hey everyone, I'm here to talk about Philly Community Wireless. If it wasn't for Monique at CTNY and other community organizations, we wouldn't have known where to get started. But back in 2020, actually, Monique and Raul ran a virtual COVID era workshop for us that was really helpful getting us started. And yeah, you can proceed to the next slide, but I'm grateful, like Esther and Monique, to the long history of community networks in Philadelphia, in the United States. In Philly Community Wireless, we started in 2020 building community internet networks in Philadelphia. We focus on both private and public properties that can help us build out a larger mesh network that traverses city blocks. The Wi-Fi spreads from a host location to neighboring public spaces, community centers, businesses, and private residences. And we seek to develop a collaborative process that incorporates community input and participation in the network's growth and sustenance. Next slide. This is just a photo from the roof of the Free Library in Fair Hill, Philadelphia. You can see in the distance the downtown of Philadelphia. And from there, we were able to broadcast across a major artery to provide Wi-Fi all around that neighborhood. And surprisingly, we get people accessing the internet all over the block who, oftentimes we don't know how they first heard about us. But this is just a kind of scale. You can see from here the whole area that we currently are trying to provide internet to. Next slide. So today we have 130 access points that we've installed since 2020 across roughly 50 properties. Some of those are multi-dwelling units, some of them are small residential units. And we believe that we serve tens of thousands of community members. We don't know every user, but we see regularly every month unique connections from different devices, over 7,000, 8,000 users, new ones each month. And we've had hundreds of volunteers over the years. We currently have about 50 active volunteers who join our small team of staff to go out and do installations and learn with us about how to build community networks. Next slide. So where are we? If you don't know Philadelphia, we're in North Philadelphia, and specifically in the neighborhoods of Fairhill, Kensington, and we started in Norris Square, where we built a kind of pilot mesh network around the park and the neighboring vicinities. We chose this area partially because we had coverage from one of our partners' towers, which I'll talk about in a second, but also because this was one of the areas that the household internet survey conducted by the city of Philadelphia identified as lacking internet access more than almost any other part of the city. And we specifically work in the areas where we believe there's a larger gap, higher or lower income levels, and typically the neighborhoods we're supporting are predominantly African American and Hispanic communities. Next slide. So when we seek to do work in a neighborhood, we partner with local community organizations, mutual aid efforts, affordable housing and social services, CDCs, and other city resources like the Free Library to leverage their real estate to share internet with neighboring communities and residents. We really seek to make the internet available inside and outside your house so that you can connect to our mesh network, walk around the neighborhood the way you would to a cellular connection and never lose internet access. In particular, we've really started in the pandemic, and we saw the importance of providing Wi-Fi to public spaces, as well as right-of-way locations where many people who might be transient or unhoused have no other option but to go there to access the internet. Next slide. So just a little bit about our funding model. We partner with a local wireless independent service provider. It's independent and focused on providing net neutral and non-monetized internet. They don't access the user's data or anything like that. And they donate us free bandwidth as well as labor, equipment, and training. We estimate that a typical install at a building would cost roughly $400 to make internet available around that block. And we depend on external funding to remain an entirely charitable organization. And the funding comes from private foundations, as well as some government agencies, donors, and other kinds of in-kind support from other local community organizations and anchor institutions. We are currently exploring various ways of doing earned revenue, including providing MSP services, providing network tours, and selling merch, which you can check out on our website. Next slide. So just a little bit about our participants. The users include people from all over the community who might be either accessing the internet network in their homes or in local public spaces. We refer to the property owners who host our network equipment as community ambassadors, and we engage with them both in terms of basic digital literacy, but also to ask their assistance in spreading the word about Philly Community Wireless. And then we would not have gotten anywhere without our amazing volunteers who come from all over the greater Philadelphia area to help participate in the construction and maintenance of our network. Next slide. So PCW has certainly served as a site of learning. We were all volunteer-led for the first few years and have had hundreds of signups in that time. Volunteers and community members can engage in installations, data analysis, networking on the back end, attending events and helping to run workshops or engage in other types of outreach. They canvas with us, put up signage, develop new graphic designs, and we tell everybody that no tech experience is needed. We rely on a train-the-trainer model where staff and long-term volunteers help teach skills to the newer participants, and sometimes our volunteers come in with more expertise than all of us. In addition, the volunteers help with providing digital literacy efforts to the community, so it's very much a shared learning space. Next slide. If you want to stay in touch, here's some information. Looking forward to talking more with everyone about community networks as sites of learning. Thank you.
All right, now we're all back together. So in your explanations and your descriptions of your activities, we could get from it some of the why behind community networks, but I really just want to draw that out to make it really plain, particularly because these are in urban areas. We were mostly talking about urban areas, and there's this perception right now, but perhaps that the places that are not well connected are rural, or that the remaining problems in urban areas are about people adopting the service. And we also know community networks have existed for a long time. So rather than declare cities totally well covered in terms of access or say this is solved in urban areas, tell us about the motivations behind your network. Alex, I'm going to kick it over to you first.
Sure. Yeah, I can start by saying I think there's a great underestimation of how much people lack access to the internet in urban areas. And
Yes.
studies remain to be done to show the types of obstacles that people encounter that are maybe unimaginable in rural environments. But it really has always amazed me, some of the people that we support, the obstacles that would have otherwise been there to them adopting usage in any way. And I think part of what is we don't want to lose track of in our growth as an organization is the value of some kind of baseline internet service that is free with no barriers to access, no need for a credit card, providing, as we do, digital literacy training, other guidance to users about how they can access the network. So, I think some of the things that we can talk about today do relate to the digital literacy that can get in the way of someone signing up for internet access. But it is about more than just money and skills. And I think there's a larger range of ways that as people become part of a community network, as they start to feel like they can be part of something bigger than themselves, they become motivated to connect to the internet in ways that they might not have thought it would be useful to them before. And so I think one of the ways that we all learn together is what actually adoption means and what the internet can be used for in our everyday lives.
Esther, you shared in your description that you get to serve a lot of unhoused people. Can you tell us more about that and more about motivations?
Yeah. So, the thing that sort of, even before we knew about like how bad it is with internet access among unhoused communities in Seattle, we knew about the history of segregation and redlining in the city. It's not a very dense city, and all of the different neighborhoods are relatively spread out and really weirdly segregated from each other. And that's like a historical artifact of, redlining and basically, histories of racism in the city. So this is common to a lot of cities. And so you end up with, at least before the pandemic, it was much worse. We would have, very disparate fiber access in different neighborhoods where even the internet plans were, very differently available. But even, if that is a little bit better now, we have this, economic problem where people don't have the income to pay for the internet connections. And so this is actually the case at tiny house villages in general. They have not allocated funding, and there's also lack of expertise where people don't know that you can just get a connection into the shelter and then broadcast that over a single Wi-Fi network that's shared. And so people, don't know how to plan for that. And so we come in with technical expertise and help out. But, you might have heard also that there are plans like Lifeline, which are, free phones that are funded by the government. And, so people can get a phone with a SIM card that has service in it and have some, low baseline of internet. These days, these plans have been mostly data capped, and they're, fairly slow. So they're not of a quality that you can actually, for example, tether a laptop off of it. So if you're trying to do something like, watch YouTube videos to skill up on something, or get a job, like apply for jobs, do computer things on the internet, then it's still very hard for you to use Lifeline. And those phones are also tend to be cheaper quality, so they break a lot. In the homeless shelters, people talk about needing to transition phones every 3 to 9 months because of some disaster with it. And so, yeah, it's a lot of economic issues with access to the internet, even with free programs, which are so important.
Thank you so much. Monique, you gave us even more things to think about with motivation around emergency preparedness too.
Absolutely. Yes. And just prior to that, prior to talking emergency preparedness, though, I'll speak to my motivation. What motivated me was twofold. Of course, being from Detroit and going through the auto auto crisis. Most of us there were displaced auto workers. And during that time frame of being displaced, and that was 2009, I did volunteer work and I was working with youth, and it seemed like middle schoolers and high schoolers, and I knew more about the internet and technology and the use of technology than they did. And I said, this can't be. We can't be in communities where there are young people coming up, they're crowding around to share a couple of computers in a high school, not even a whole computer lab. I think that there were 6 computers there in total. And high school students were trying to submit for colleges, trying to take exams. And it was very saddening to see that scenario occur, but also Detroit was identified as the #1 disconnected city in the country. And we held that title. It's not a proud title, but we held that title for probably at least about 5 years or 6 years before, and that's when it was being monitored, before there started being some activity. So wanting to make sure that I could serve my own community, because I was doing volunteer work in the local high school as well as in my neighborhood. I've been an active community organizer for well over, probably it's 40 years now, and just seeing that most of my neighbors and friends did not have an internet connection. So we approached and wanted to go with shared internet. And that was my key motivation for wanting to enter into this area, to make sure that there were not others left behind, because there is a certain direct correlation, as was already mentioned, about the lack of income. The Detroit numbers that reflected those who don't have internet, which were 40% or greater, they were almost identical and parallel to the poverty level. And the redlining that Esther mentioned was also an indicator of lack of and without, and I just refuse to allow that to continue to occur. I can speak to the emergency preparedness on another question if you'd like. So
Sure.
I spend time on this.
I want to talk a little bit about infrastructure, because you're all involved in constructing, maintaining infrastructure, planning it, and seeing it to fruition. In the case of commercial broadband networks, this is often invisible to people who use it. Definitions of infrastructure say that we only notice it when it's broken, for example. But for this reason, it's not common for users of commercial broadband networks to intervene in the network, to see things, to change things, to configure things. So I'm curious how you invite the community into participating in planning and building and maintenance, and the kinds of things you do to demystify. Monique, you used the word demystify earlier, I think, so I'm gonna start with you here.
That's fine, because it's actually the part that I love to talk about the most, that this is community driven, and community tech is in our name with intention. And it's also in the name of the way that we approach teaching. Community technology is a form of educating and meeting people where they are. Even myself, I'm an example of that. I knew nothing about this side of tech and came from the very beginning of learning about it, being enthused about it, and now can work to build a network. And when I was identified that I could do that, I'm like, well, I know that there are lots of other people who are much better in tech than I, who can do the same thing. But the part that I love about this work is that we help people tap into the genius that they didn't even know that they had in some cases, because we're recruiting from the neighborhood, from the community. We want people who are already vested into where they are, and they are because they live there. We want them to be invested in helping to provide the communication tools for their neighborhood. So when you talk about how do we engage with community members, I've been known to go to basketball courts where there are a bunch of people playing ball and saying like, hey, what do you all have internet, or what are you using? Because the misnomer when people say, yeah, we have internet, it's the telephone. A lot of them are talking about even right now today, and it's not an internet connection at home. So you have to be a door knocker and a street walker to connect with and interact with in communities. That's why it's really ideal to start it where you are, because you're able to help demystify the internet for those, because you share and teach somebody something that they never knew or understood. And when you allow people to not work outside of the box, but find out and identify what's in the box, and they are generally inspired. I remember, I'll leave with this last statement. And I've trained thousands of digital stewards across the country. And in particular, there was a couple of young people that I had. They were in their early 20s, and they were like, Miss Tate, we do not even want to be in this class. We are just here because our friends tell us we should know about the internet. And I said, you should. And they sometime during training, because it's lengthy, would be a little bored, but they turned out to be the best digital steward installers that I ever had. They were so into it, they went farther and beyond in studying and learning information for themselves. That's when I think that we've really made a connection. And that's why we should continue to allow those in the community to gain these skills, use them for themselves, and invest in their communities and others in and around their communities. Because digital justice, that's what demystifies tech, bringing everybody in and allowing everyone to work and create our own technologies, not just working with those that are in front of us.
Esther, pop on in.
Oh, yeah. So I was really inspired by the model that Monique pioneered with the digital stewards. I will say, like, we in our small organization, we don't have the funding often to run these digital stewards programs. And I have also found that classes are really good when they can lead into paid positions. And for a lot of these folks, like, they can't afford to just do volunteer work, especially if they're like lower income community members. And so I have found classes to be not as helpful for demystifying. I think when I've taught, like, for example, as a guest in other people's workforce development programs, like, I really encourage people to look at the street poles and the handholds, like the manhole covers on the street and the street markings, and just open their eyes to what's there, and the fact that they can actually see the network infrastructure and who doesn't have physical infrastructure in their neighborhood. They can also, look online to see who has internet coverage from certain providers or not, what kind of plans they have. And I would say, above all, and I think Monique would probably agree with this, hands-on experience with the network equipment is above all the best way to demystify networks. Yeah, because people don't really know even, like, what is a router, and what is an IP address, and the fact that you can see one on your phone, like when you're on any Wi-Fi network, like, that's helpful. And so, yeah, I would say, like, the more hands-on you can get, the better, to get over that intimidation factor and just not even knowing what you don't know. And then after that, I would say it's surprising how much working with networks is like experience, and then reading, the output of different things that you do to the equipment, or Googling. And, like, that's, you really have to just learn it by hand.
Thanks so much. Alex, you mentioned also working with the building ambassadors too, to getting them up to speed on what's happening with networks. How does Philly Community Wireless bring people in to learn?
Yeah, no, I'll add to everything Monique and Esther said. I think part of our interest in public spaces and providing Wi-Fi to public spaces is they can serve as spaces or sites for learning. And one of the things we now do is provide network tours where we walk around Norris Square, we point out the access points, explain how the network travels between different radios, and even just for people who maybe aren't comfortable getting involved with volunteering or installation, we hope that by having visible infrastructure and by putting up signage and explaining to people how it works, they'll understand different layers of the internet than you could understand by trying to see the fiber that's buried under the ground. But beyond that, when we do the actual work of installation and outreach, every encounter is an opportunity for learning. So if we're coming to your house and we're installing internet, we're probably gonna have to explain to you the process of putting an antenna on the roof, running a cable inside, setting up a router in your house, and then differentiating a router from a Wi-Fi access point, setting up a Wi-Fi access point outside their house as well as inside, so that we can share the internet with neighbors. And I think part of the motivation for a lot of people is that they want to learn about the internet so they can, for one thing, manage their own internet networks. Even the first time they're getting internet, they want to know, how does this work? How do I make it work better? And what can be really exciting for people to realize is it's not just something you can do at home. It's something you can go out into your neighborhood and help other people with. And so one of the early motivations for Philly Community Wireless, or one of the starting points for it, was me and other people in the community were doing park cleanups and neighborhood connections around helping out in the neighborhood. And we like to think that similarly, Philly Community Wireless offers a space for people to learn how they can contribute to the growth of digital infrastructure and a community network in their neighborhood, the same way they can go out and clean the park. And that, the extent of where you can contribute to growing infrastructure is not just at your own house, it's at your neighbor's house. And that, by connecting with your neighbor about it, by working together, you both can learn together more about what's possible in your neighborhood.
Very cool. The next question I have for you feels like a clear lead in from what you're just talking about, that we go beyond the individual and we go beyond the household. So I want to talk about the kind of digital inclusion that community networks offer. So you're extending access to the internet, you're extending knowledge about networks, and you're also extending a measure of control over access, which is something, again, that outside of community networks don't, as a user of a subscriber to a commercial broadband service, you don't typically get a lot of control over that access. So I'm curious about your organization's kind of concept of digital inclusion. Monique, you mentioned digital justice earlier, so I'm going to start with you.
Yes. Digital inclusion for for us is significantly important, because we're not the kind of organization that, because we are educators and consultants, we don't depart. We don't just come in to a community, work with you for a few moments, and then leave. As mentioned when I referenced El Puente, we've been working with El Puente for 4 years. We've been working with the Point and them building their community network for, I think that goes now into about 8 years, because we want them to continue to grow. And that's a part of being vested. So the inclusive part is to train people on working on the equipment themselves, and it becomes autonomous. And one of our partners in New Orleans refers to these networks as alternative autonomous communication networks, but it means you can control your own thing. So the inclusivity of it allows you to decide what direction you would like your network to go in. Do you want to use CBRS technology? Do you want to use wireless or wired? But you've got to understand what those various things are. And we are always inspiring our communities to go the next step. One thing I will mention, though, too, is this is not something that's Pop-Tart. It's not quick. This is like making, what is that, sourdough bread that takes a long time. This takes a while. You have to be invested in it, because one of the things about the community outreach, which is so significant about it, it also takes time. You have to be patient. Don't think that things are going to turn around right away. Don't even believe that people are automatically going to get it. You're in your mind thinking like, oh, don't you know that you need internet? And there are people who, I don't care what age they are, they're like, no, we don't. We don't need it. We don't want it, because of the lack of trust for it. So I will say that, yes, definitely our vision for inclusivity is to make sure that not only is the community involved with installing, building it out, but that they also can change it. It's autonomous. We want people to own what's in front of them, build their own infrastructure. That's why the portable network kit and the long range radios that we're working with are so key, because people can tailor them to be what they need. There are many people these days, regrettably, that need private, encrypted communication with one another. It's not only for personal salvation, but also, as I mentioned earlier, for emergency preparedness, because it's not if a disaster is going to occur, it's when. And what will you do? We all just went through a disaster where, one entity was able to take out the internet and impact service across the world. That's too much. We have to know how to take care of things ourselves.
Alex, I'm going to turn this one to you about digital inclusion for Philly Community Wireless.
Yeah, I mean, digital inclusion can mean so many things. But I think part of what is essential, and I really appreciate Esther's focus on this, is having an idea of the specific populations that are being excluded by current digital equity efforts and the infrastructure more broadly. So transient populations and unhoused populations are one of the primary groups that we seek to support, but it also can include some of our partner organizations that we've actively sought to build out long-term collaborations with, our CDCs that service senior housing areas, and so we've been installing at multi-dwelling units where we're providing a free internet network across multiple properties and green spaces, and then hosting events specifically for that group to try to provide them with the resources they need to use the internet safely. And so we've partnered with PCs for People and other groups in Philly to distribute computers. We've run various types of cybersecurity training, and a lot of the time working with other partners to provide kind of holistic services. Even in some cases, installing computers at people's places if they can't come to pick them up themselves. There's not a lot of digital equity programs that actually involve the stewards going into people's houses and being in their private spaces. And so we have unique opportunities to really talk with people and meet them where they're at. And I think that's fundamentally, to meet them where they're at, that we go to their neighborhood, we learn about, and we seek out people in the neighborhood to help us, and we figure out what they need there, and try to cater the internet that we're building to the needs in that space.
Thanks. Esther, tell us about digital inclusion for Seattle Community Network.
I just really want to echo Alex's point about kind of the mixing between people in this community networking process. Like I think one of our core missions is actually to build like a closer knit, stronger community across these like different socioeconomic boundaries. And so we try to do that and build like one community of practice that includes everyone as much as we can. The other thing is, I just wanted to echo like how much the rules of access determine who has access. And so that's why we want our community to actually own and run this, the internet access, because then they can choose to make it free. They can choose, what to make free and how that whole model works, but they do have to learn to maintain it. And so like one of our other core missions, I think, is actually to go beyond like what you would typically learn just doing an install like in a single place. We want to demystify the internet to the ISP level. So kind of document and teach and spread how to do everything from like the autonomous system level where you've got servers racked in a data center, like having your own IP addresses, your own software services. And I think this has a lot to do with like we like to support Indigenous sovereignty as well through our works with the tribal boot camps, and having your own sovereign networks like requires all of this to have true, complete control where someone else, you're not beholden to someone else's rules and prices for access as much. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm going to invite our audience to submit questions via YouTube. And while I wait for somebody to frantically type away, I've also got more questions if needed. All right, while we're giving it a second, I am just going to ask you about what are needs and challenges that your networks are currently facing, your organizations are currently facing. Esther, I'll go back to you first.
Well, one thing that is quite evident is that we are sort of behind. We're like a smaller organization than either of the other two networks here. We don't have any staff. We need staff. We have volunteers doing everything, including things that are not our focus, like grant writing, managing, bookkeeping, and this can get really draining when it's not, we have to do it outside of our normal jobs, and it's not actually what our core activities or interests are. So we are, trying to find more funding. We also tend to lack people who are as much able to do the door knocking and street walking, which ideally has to happen during work hours or during the day. And yeah, so we would like to be able to pay people. We also are still using free city connections, internet connections that will apparently go away at the end of the year due to an acquisition of CenturyLink fiber by AT&T. So that kind of thing, we're vulnerable to those changes. And I hope that we can become more resilient, funding wise.
I'm going to bring up a couple YouTube questions. So Esther, you mentioned joining into workforce development programs. You've had been able to work with other organizations. We have a question about registering this sort of work as an apprenticeship with potentially a state or regional workforce development program or board. Do you have any experience in this space?
Yeah, apprenticeships and I think internships, they all have specific legal requirements. And so having, all of these certifications and licenses to do these things is often a barrier. That's why we haven't looked too deeply into it, because I know there's a lot of red tape. But yeah, I think we could look into that more, especially if the other workforce development programs already have those licenses, and then maybe they could register something and we could support. But again, I think we're currently limited by our not lack of staff, non-capacity.
Yeah.
And if jump in, please.
No, I was just going to say, if we're waiting for a second, I want to talk about some of the challenges and things we need. Of course, Esther hit it, and definitely funding is always an issue, because you want to respect people and be able to pay them, because people can't work for free. So we should be paying volunteers and finding stipends and all for them. But there's also something that I refer to as digital philanthropy. And it's something that I think should occur. And that is the donation of internet from internet service providers. They can afford it. They can donate internet for people that we're training to build community networks so that they can be built everywhere. The amount of fiber, they could give one string, and we did so much work with just a gig. Some people are now getting a gig alone for their own home and privacy. And we were able to take that gig and share it out amongst hundreds, providing wired and wireless. So I think that is really significant, something that they really should be kind of made to do, but in their heart, they should want to do. They know everyone is not at the same level, so and does not have the same access. And we're also not the competition for them. They're not coming to our communities because the per capita income is not there. So since you're not coming anyway, and you're not bringing anything, just let us use a part of that line, and we can work together. But that also provides a pipeline too for employment, for some of those, as I said, who discover the genius they never knew that they had. I know you had another question, so I don't want to take too much time there.
I want Alex to chime in, because he's...
Yeah, I agree. No, Monique, I think that's a really important point. And I would say there's maybe 4 things that we all need, which is money, assets, real access to property, partner organizations that can help us where we can't do everything, and then bandwidth, more bandwidth. And I think to the workforce initiative, we definitely see ourselves as helping people build the skills and get the connections they might need to find a job. And we've watched lots of our volunteers go through that process, and it's been definitely one of the joys of working in this organization. But one other thing that has really worked, which I'd recommend to you too, Esther, is we partnered with a local group called the Urban Technology Project, and they kind of host apprentices through the Philly School District that then intern with us. And that apprenticeship model and that partnership is really exciting, and I hope we continue to do it in the future. When it comes to the bandwidth, we're a good example of what's possible. We are partnered with a local independent service provider, Philly Whisper. They are giving free bandwidth It is no sweat off their backs. And it's a good PR move for them. If they can afford to do it, Comcast and Verizon can definitely afford to do it. And what ideally would happen is all around the city, even without our involvement, people would start sharing their internet networks beyond the premises of their property to neighboring parks, to neighbors who can't afford internet. And the only thing stopping that is some of these ISPs, or all of them pretty much, have various terms and conditions that make that technically illegal. But
Yes.
really, New York City Mesh and lots of community networks were born out of the idea that the internet goes through walls and we should be allowed to share it beyond, the confines of our property. And I think if we can have that, the rest will come, partners, funding, access to property. It's really the ISPs that could make an enormous difference, and maybe the right kind of pressure on them would. But it's currently hard to imagine something like that happening at a national level. Maybe there's ways we can negotiate small internet providers around the country, but it is an essential part of building out community networks.
Yeah. It used to be a consideration before DEI was considered bad, which of course it's not.
We had a question from YouTube about content or a portal about other sort of social services and social benefits, how that might figure into the service you provide.
That's actually a good point, because we have always been affiliated with wraparound services, because if people need internet, they need other things as well. So our local organizations who I've worked with both in New York and in Detroit, and actually in other areas in the country, they do all of that. They do wraparound services. So whether it's food or clothing or helping with digital literacy skills, providing equipment, helping people be directed to where they may get utility assistance, we offer all of those things generally together. And when we talk about food, one of the key aspects of working together as a community is that no matter what kind of event, and we always have to have community-based events to recruit and inform people that there is even an opportunity to get internet from one of our resources, then we always provide food. And I don't mean some potato chips. You always have to feed people. Don't make, and that's why, our funding has to go a long way, because we need to provide, if you're keeping someone in for training, for instance, for 4 hours, or to teach them how to build something, they need something more substantial than some potato chips. So that being a wraparound service in and of itself. When we have what we refer to as discotheques, discovering technology fairs, they are like big science fairs, but they're ways to bring the people together. And we always invite partners to those discotheques who provide other services, whether they were the government phones when they were being given out, but we provide people there. Even banking systems have come, because most banks are connected to needing to make donations to the communities that they serve in, and they would help those who were unbanked to become bank, or help them to provide other resources, so that they would have a way to cash their paychecks and not go to cash centers.
Yeah. Recognizing that we are a couple minutes away from the hour, I'm going to do a lightning round in your 30-second spiel, your realistic hopes for the future of your network and or community networks. Esther, I'm going to you first.
Well, I guess just quickly to follow on to Monique, like I think every town or every place should have a community network, because I think what we provide, this expertise in like computers and internet, like that's something that anyone who is helping people like needs sometimes to refer to for help. So like these other wraparound services actually ask us to come in and help them, because they don't have the expertise or the same resources that we do and focus on. And so this is really important for digital equity. And I think even for me, I would like to see the growth of community networks. what I really want, I've been seeking funding to put together a community networks conference so we can sort of like revitalize this movement.
Yeah.
I haven't been successful so far, but it's a thing that a lot of us want, I think, to like help get more people into the movement.
Very cool. Monique, your quick, realistic hopes for the future of community networks.
Yes, I want them to continue. I want them to grow, to continue to stay. I want community tech labs also to grow because there are wonderful opportunities to connect, and that's how other partners can give. They have some spaces that they can give, so we can continue to train people in all aspects of taking care of their digital equity needs. I also want to continue with those in politics to get involved, understand what it is that we're offering and help with support. I have to speak to Mamdani because as mayor, he has invited Community Tech New York, my co-director, Raul Enriquez in particular, as a New York resident, to be part of his transition team. I like seeing that outreach so that you are not just going by what you think or what you heard. You're involving those who are right there on the ground and engaged with helping to provide. So that's also what I'd like to see, the support coming from there. And then maybe we might be able to get those ISPs to do better donations of bandwidth and space as we get them involved. And one last comment, I also like to see people who are engaged in this work to be the true doers, not those who are out there just talking about community technology and, oh yeah, we're doing something and helping the community, but those who are really walking the walk, those who are in the neighborhoods and the communities, and they know the members that they're serving and helping to serve them not only from providing access, but also with the wraparound services. So walk the walk.
Alex, you get the last word on realistic hopes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, just to keep growing. I think one installation at a time, and along with installation, that people grow to understand ways they can use these networks in new ways. If internet's in a public space, what does that allow you to do in that public space maybe you couldn't have done before, and that by growing here in Philly, we'll provide another model that justifies why community networks need to grow all over the country in every urban dense area. Especially I think the dense urban areas have unique problems, and community networks are a unique solution for them.
I want to thank you all so much for joining us. I would be happy to reach out to panelists if you are seeking contact information. But again, thank you so much for this conversation and for telling us about your experiences. This has been very illuminating. And thanks to all our viewers online.
Thank you.